So picture this. You're in bed with your partner. They reach over and you just don't want to. You're not angry at them. You don't want to break up, but you're just not feeling it tonight. And maybe not for a while now. And in that moment, both of you feel just awful. They feel rejected, you feel guilty, and neither of you knows what to say. And this happens in so many relationships, and nobody talks about it. So today, we're going to. We're going to look at why one person wanting more sex than the other is so common, and why it's so much more complicated than just one person has a higher sex drive. We're going to talk about where our ideas about sex come from, and what desire actually is, and how it works, and what both people in this situation are really going through. And then I'll give you some real practical places to start, whether you're the person who wants sex more or whether you're the person who wants sex less. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Cyndi Darnell, sex and relationship therapist, working with all kinds of people in all kinds of relationship configurations all over the world. This channel is where we have the conversations many of us are having in our heads, but not out loud. Here we talk about relationships, desire, intimacy, connection, friendships, emotions, grief, and what gets in the way. And if that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. So let's get started. So let's begin by looking at why the usual advice doesn't work. Because when people talk about mismatched sex drives, one person wanting more, one person wanting less, the advice is usually pretty simple. Schedule date nights, try new things, and just do it even when you don't want to. And sometimes that can work. A bit. But most couples I work with have already tried all of that, and they're still stuck. And here's why. That advice treats the problem like it's a broken machine, like there's one faulty part that you just need to fix. But people are not machines, and desire, the feeling of wanting to be close to someone sexually, that is not just a switch that you flip back on. The real problem is usually deeper than not enough sex. And when we look only at the surface, we miss so much of what's actually going on. But before we can understand desire, we need to look at where our ideas about sex come from, because most of us were never really taught about it honestly. So think about it. Growing up, you might have been told that sex is private, or that maybe it's dangerous, or that it's only for certain kinds of people, or only okay in certain contexts. And you probably saw it everywhere in movies and ads, but nobody sat you down and explained how it actually works emotionally, psychically, socially. No one ever explained to you how desire actually feels, or what creates it, or how it's normal for it to change over time. And so most of us figured it out as we went along. And through that, we picked up a lot of ideas just from around that aren't actually true. And one of the biggest ones is this, that if you love someone, you should always want to have sex with them. And if you don't, that means that there's something wrong. But here's the thing. Love and sexual desire are just not the same thing. They are connected sometimes for some people, but they're very, very different on their own. You can love your partner completely and still not feel like having sex with them. And that doesn't mean that your love is broken, but it does mean that you're a human being and that desire is complicated. So when we let go of the idea that love and desire must always show up together, we can actually start to figure out what's really happening between you. So something that's critically important that I will share with you here briefly. There is something that changes everything for a lot of people when they hear this. And there are two main ways that desire works. The first is called spontaneous desire. This is the type of desire a lot of us are already quite familiar with. This is when the want or the horniness just shows up on its own. You're not doing anything special, and then all of a sudden, you just feel like you want to have sex. This is what most of us think as normal desire, because it's what we see in movies, and it's usually the default setting that we talk about in a lot of social and cultural contexts. But the second, more common, is called responsive desire. And responsive desire happens in response to contexts that are inviting not just to the mind, but also to the nervous system. And this means that the person with responsive desire has enough time to shift gears from their regular life to allow the mind and the body, that means the nervous system, to begin to sync up. And this is something that happens over time, not just a quick kiss and a little bit of so-called foreplay. I'm actually going to make another video about so-called foreplay another time. But the critical thing about responsive desire is it doesn't just respond to sexual contexts. In fact, often it doesn't respond to sexual contexts at all if the soothing and calming and attuned inviting contexts haven't been set first. And these contexts happen in the hours, the days, and even the weeks where you're just living your normal lives. If contextual invitations only happen 5 minutes before heading to the bedroom, it's very likely a responsive desire partner will simply not respond at all. And the contextual cues are just not right. That's because responsive desire isn't just responding to kisses and massages. It's responding to an entire environment of safety and the ability to relax and focus on receiving pleasure. And that looks different for different people. And neither of these styles is better or worse. They are really just different. But here's the problem. Most people assume that spontaneous desire is the only kind of real desire. So if your desire is more responsive, if you only start feeling interested once the vibe has been set, or if it never gets set, you might think that there is something wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You just have responsive desire, which is actually very common, especially in long-term relationships. And when one person in a couple has spontaneous desire and the other has responsive desire, they are often going to misread each other. The spontaneous one thinks, they never want me. The responsive one thinks, I'm broken and I'm letting them down. And sometimes you both can collude to agree that that story is true. And it's not. Both of these stories caused a lot of pain. And so this is why mismatched desire or low libido is always a relational problem, never one person's fault. Just a quick pause here. If this is helpful, please hit the like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more of these conversations. And if this is landing for you and you want to go further, there's a few ways that we can work together. My book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, is a good place to start, especially for people who like a deep dive in reading. And if you're looking for something more personal, I do offer coaching and counseling for individuals and couples via video all over the world. And if you would like a more structured path you can move through in your own time, my online course, The Desire Series, is especially about this topic. Links to all of that are below. Now let's get back to it, because what both people are going through is a critical piece of the conversation. Usually the conversation focuses on only one person, often the one who wants less sex. And that tends to come from these social ideas and cultural beliefs that the lower desire person is the problem and that they have to fix it, while the higher desire person sits back and says, I'm okay. This is not true. There are so many reasons why someone might not feel like having sex, and most of them have nothing to do with not loving their partner. There might be issues in their personal history, trauma, sexual assault, and things like this. They might be exhausted. They might be stressed at work. They might be going through something emotionally. They might be feeling disconnected from their body or taking medication that affects their desire. They might also be feeling like there's unresolved tension in the relationship and they don't know how to talk about it, or it hasn't been talked about. Desire doesn't exist in a bubble. It's connected to everything else in your life. So when life is hard, desire is often one of the first things to go quiet. And the problem is that most people in this position feel ashamed, like they're failing their partner, so they go quiet about it. And that silence makes the distance between them even bigger. And then for the person who wants more sex, this person also doesn't get enough honest attention in these conversations. And often, when someone wants more sex in a relationship, it's not just about the physical activities. For a lot of people, sex is how they feel close, how they feel loved, or how they know that the relationship is okay. And for others, sex is how they have learnt to regulate their own emotions, so when they come to their partner with a lot of desire, that can often land as neediness or hunger or even desperation. Because for the person who regulates their nervous system through sex, it can feel like an emergency. They really feel the need for sex, and sometimes that's true. But it can also be that they need to feel relieved of whatever discomfort they're feeling internally, but they have never realized that that's what was happening for them, or how to regulate their emotions any other way. It's often suggested that an act of love is that the partner helps them relieve their tension by providing sex, as if it's a free mental health service. So when that stops happening, they don't just feel less satisfied. They feel less loved, less connected, like something important is slipping away. And that's a really painful place to be. But it often comes out as frustration or pressure, which then makes the other person feel even more cornered. And so around and around it goes. And both people are hurting, but both people deserve to feel understood. So let's pivot slightly here and talk about what turns you on and what turns you off. Because one of the most useful things you can do is get to know your own desire pattern, your own desire style. In my book, I refer to it as your erotic template. So this involves looking at what actually helps desire show up or what shuts it down. So think of it like a light switch, but instead of it being just one switch, there are two. One is the on switch and one is the off switch, and both of them are running at the same time. The on switch responds to things like feeling safe with your partner, feeling attractive, having enough time and space to relax and get into it, feeling emotionally connected, not being stressed about other things. While the off switch responds to things like feeling pressured, being exhausted, having unresolved arguments, feeling like sex is an obligation, feeling like you're the therapist in the relationship, or not feeling good in your body. Most of the time, when desire isn't showing up, people try to find more things to press the on switch. New date ideas, new lingerie, new positions, more romantic effort. But if the off switch is still fully off, none of that is going to make much difference. No matter how much on you put, the off switch just remains off. So the real question isn't just, how do I want more? It's also, what is keeping the desire switched off for me right now? So some common answers that I often hear include, I feel like I have no time to myself and sex feels like just one more demand on my body. I'm carrying a lot of stress and I can't seem to let it go when I get into bed. I feel like we're more just roommates or housemates than partners right now. I'm scared to say what I actually want because I know how they'll react. I feel like sex has become something I owe and not something I choose. Do any of these land for you? Notice them because these are really useful information. So now we're going to talk about why talking about this is so hard. Most couples don't really talk about their sex life, even when it's causing real problems. They hint, they hope their partner will bring it up, they have arguments about other things that are actually about this, or they stay quiet because they don't want to make it worse. And, I get it. Talking about sex is vulnerable. And when you say, I want this or I don't want that, You're showing someone something that they really could reject or simply dismiss. And then for you, that's scary, right? Especially if you've tried before and it didn't go well. But here's what I've seen over and over. The silence usually makes things harder, not easier, because both people are filling that silence with their own guesses. And those guesses really are often very, very wrong. The person who wants less sex thinks they're angry at me. They think I'm broken. Or worse, they're going to leave. And the person who wants more thinks they don't find me attractive anymore. They don't care about my needs. They're checked out. And in both cases, neither of those things might be true. But without a real conversation, both people just sit with the worst case version of this story. Now, you don't need a perfect script for this conversation, but you do need to know what you're actually trying to say and trust your capacity to hear what's being said to you. And all of this starts with, firstly, understanding your own experience before you try to explain it to somebody else. So, where do we start? What can you actually do with all of this? Start with yourself. Before any conversation with your partner, spend some time with your own experience and ask yourself honestly, when was the last time I felt genuinely turned on or interested? And what was different about that time? Think about the stage of life you were in. What was going on? Where had you been? What were you doing? And I don't just mean in the 5 minutes before. I mean around that time, like the entire day, the entire week, possibly even the entire month. What was happening? Start to think about sex as something that doesn't just happen 5 minutes after you get into bed at night. Think about it through the lens of how you're living your life. This is a really important distinction for a lot of people to learn. And next, based on some of the ideas I shared with you earlier, ask yourself, what might be contributing to switching off my desire? Stress, disconnection, exhaustion, pressure, experiencing a needy partner, something else? Go with your intuition on this. Don't overthink it, because there is a wise, intelligent, emotional part of you that has some of the answers here. And then the third question to sit with and ask yourself is, what would I need to feel more comfortable talking about this? Would I need to trust that my partner would hear me without getting angry? Would I need to trust that they are genuinely interested in what I have to say? Think about what you would need to give to yourself or from your partner that's going to make you feel safer and more confident with being able to bring this topic to your partner. You don't need to have all the answers, and you certainly don't need to have it perfectly worked out. But getting curious about your own experience without judging yourself is always the first step. And if you're the lower desire partner, know that wanting less sex than your partner doesn't make you broken, cold, or unloving. It just means that your desire has gone quiet, probably for a reason, and that reason is worth exploring with patience and kindness, not with shame. And if you're the higher desire partner, try to get curious about what you're really asking for. Is it closeness? Is it feeling wanted? Is it reassurance? Is it validation? Is it regulation? When you can be honest with yourself about what your motivations are, it makes the conversation with your partner much, much easier. When you can name what's underneath the wanting and the hunger that you experience, it really changes the caliber of the conversation, because you're no longer asking just for a physical act. You're asking about a very real need. And that is a different and much more tender conversation to have. And if you're going to talk to your partner about it, pick a time when you're not already in the middle of doing something else. You're not in the middle of an argument. You're not in bed. Or it's not right after a rejected advance. Choose a calm moment where you both have the time and the space. Even just saying, I feel like we've both been quiet about this, and I don't want us to keep going like that, is a really helpful start. I have an entire playlist here on YouTube called When Sex Stops, where all my videos about this topic are listed. It's linked below, and I encourage all of you to check it out. So, one last thing. Mismatched desire is incredibly common. In fact, I would say 100% of couples experience it at some stage in their relationship. And this applies to straight couples as well as gay, lesbian, queer, all kinds of couples. This is a very, very normal human experience. And it doesn't mean that your relationship is over. It doesn't mean either that you or your partner is broken, and it doesn't necessarily mean complete incompatibility. But it does mean that you are two people with two different experiences of desire, living very real lives, carrying real pressures, and no one ever gave you the tools to talk about it. So that's what this work is for, to give you those tools and to remind you that you're not the first person to lie in bed feeling like something's gone wrong. And you won't be the last. So it is worth talking about, and you can start today. If this video has been helpful for you, please share it with someone who might need it. Like and subscribe and leave a comment below. I love to read them. Remember that this stuff isn't simple, and I don't think it should be, but it is absolutely worth staying with. Check out my book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It. It's linked below, along with my online courses, in particular the Desire series, also linked below. You can reach out to me for coaching, counseling, and other kinds of support. And on my website, I have long-form articles that you might want to read too. Everything is listed in the description. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you watching these videos, liking and sharing. And let me know in the comments how this landed for you. And are there other topics you would like me to go into? Your support means a lot to me, and I'll see you next time.